Welcome back to the show, The Young Entrepreneur's Bible. This is episode 10. My name is Eduardo Duran. I'm here with my co-host, Mateo Delagula, and we're going solo today.
Yeah, no guests, just us. Yeah. Well, I mean, we kind of thought we've had a bunch of guests on and we haven't had the opportunity to talk ourselves and tell you guys what we do or, anything about our entrepreneurial journey. So, this time around, we're going to talk about ourselves for once and, let you guys learn a little bit more about who we are if you don't know us already. But I guess just to start off, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, my name is Eduardo Duran. I am the co-host here. I also have a real estate leasing company called Lease with Ease. You can find us online at lwleasing.com and also on all the socials and whatever. I've been in real estate for 2.5 years, and currently I just graduated from UT. For those who are watching on YouTube, check out the ring. Kiss the ring, baby. And I graduated with mechanical engineering. Not really using that. I'm going the entrepreneurial way. Maybe I will in the future using, real estate and tech is kind of the goal there. I actually met Mateo here during our orientation in 2019 in June.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember he'll tell you he was on a Lyme and
I got injured.
he got injured. He'll give you that story.
Yeah, first friend at UT.
Yeah, for real. And this just to kind of give you guys the purpose of today's episode is to kind of give you guys more background about who we are. And this show actually came to be in a pretty spontaneous manner. We just kind of thought, why don't we just do a podcast? And it kind of was not really a joke, but just kind of threw it out there. Yeah, an idea. And we just, in light and spirit of entrepreneurship, said, how much does it cost? And we went on Amazon and we
found it.
We picked the stuff. We went to different audio equipment stores. We saw Amazon was pretty much the move. And we just decided to buy it all, set it all up. And here we are 10 episodes later. And, we're graduated now. Mateo has other news coming in his life. So this is not going to end, though. We're going to keep this going. So that's kind of my spiel. I'm sure we'll get more into it, but go ahead now.
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, I'm Mateo. I'm your other co-host here at the Young Entrepreneur's Bible, and I have a startup called Local. It's a freelance marketplace for college students to do marketing services for small businesses. And so you can visit us online at local.com. I came to UT. I actually came to UT undecided. Funny enough, I actually don't originally think I was supposed to get into this university. I think my accolades were a little bit low or subpar compared to many students at the school. So I came in undeclared, which, allowed me to get in because I didn't choose a major. And then from there, the next couple of years were a fight to figure out what I was going to major in. Ultimately didn't end up getting any of the majors I really wanted. Had to settle for government or political science because I did think at one point I wanted to be an attorney. And just like you, not using that. I just graduated as well, and figuring out what comes next in life, what to do. And so, I do have some steps and opportunities that I'm evaluating and working on right now. And he obviously knows all about it, but yep. Big things coming, big moves coming. But yeah, we're planning on continuing this show. We're still young. I'd like to think. I don't know, man. Every day I feel older and older.
No, we're little babies in the real world.
We are. Yeah, that's always a weird thing. I don't know. I mean, you probably get this or feel this, but nowadays whenever I go out, it feels different because, when you go out, you're used to going to the college bars where all of your friends are, and you know everybody, or you recognize their face, or like they were in a class or whatever, and now
Mm-hmm.
it's just literally being thrown in like with the masses.
Yeah.
So just going out there and hanging out with everybody, and it's definitely gonna be different trying to make friends. It'll be interesting.
I think that's a big, our show, a lot of you listeners are in the same demographic as us, young, wanting to do something with their lives in an entrepreneurial manner. A lot of y'all went to college, doesn't matter if you did or didn't, but I think it's a big transition going from a student life over to being a functional working adult. And, you know, I thought about this recently. It's not just like another graduation, um, going from middle school to high school or high school to college or any graduation like that. It's really like the end of the student lifestyle where I don't know when your earliest memories are, but like for as long as I can even remember, I've always been in school
Yeah.
from elementary school all the way up. And what's your number one priority? Get good grades, stay out of trouble, is whatever. And like even if you held a job in high school or in college, like you primarily still spent 10, 15, 20, 40 hours a week on school, being in school, school related activities. And now all that just got ripped out of my schedule.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a weird transition of my main functional purpose is no longer student, which has been kind of like the job. And now it's whatever your role is, and soon it'll be, husband, father, whatever. So it's a pretty big shift, and I think a lot of people need guidance with that shift, and it's kind of rough for some people. If you have to go work like in Odessa where there's, I don't know, offense, but not much to do, or you move out to Wisconsin with nobody that all your friends, you left all your life behind. Your family, you left behind when you came to college. That's fine because you're around 50,000, people in our demographic who are trying to party, drink, have a good time, get to know each other, network. But if you move out there, like I know some friends of mine who move out to, pretty remote areas or at least areas where they don't know anybody. Even like New York City, where there's so much to do. Like yes, but you get drowned out with the millions of people, and it can even be more lonely there than anywhere else. So it's kind of, I think it's definitely a big shift, and I think having an entrepreneurial venture you work on the side, at least for me, I think it's been a great bridge process because it's if you put yourself like where we're recording right now, like this is a community of people who
Are like us,
yeah,
like-minded,
yeah,
entrepreneurial.
and it's real easy to just kind of go do your 9 to 5, come home, like just watch Netflix for the rest of the day and then do nothing and then see nobody. If you have a girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, you could just coop up with them and that's it. And like, that's cool. But if, a lot of people don't even have that. And it's just kind of like their rhythm is just wake up, fuck this, I have to go to work, go slug through the day, go home.
Yeah.
And then just rinse and repeat and like do something they hate. So that's why I think it's the deeper purpose of the show for me was to inspire people to want to, try to create something because it feels good when you have like, when I get home, instead of doing that, I'll be excited and like get on the computer. Even if I worked a 10-hour day, I'll get on there and I'll scheme about the new website I want to build or the new whatever thing about the business. So I think it's a cure for a lot of the problems. I think having a side hustle, and I think that's what I really like, being able to kind of show that.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess just to go back like a little bit, I think one thing obviously to mention is we're in a very unique position being able to go to college. Like not everybody does
True.
that. And so like this feeling that we're having or this experience that we are experiencing right now, there are people we know that went through this shit 4 years ago, like trying to figure out what comes next and what to do next with their lives. And in a way, I'm a little envious of some of them because I think it's either, the dilemma is either one of two things. Either like stupidity, they didn't want to go to college or they didn't know to go to college. Maybe that was a little bit of ignorance, or it's a lot of maturity. And they're more mature than us and knew I didn't know to go. I didn't have to go to college. Like I don't need it. I don't want it. Like I know what I'm going to go do after that. And, I have friends who are doing great now and didn't go to college. But I think ultimately it's like you don't want to just sit around being a bum. Like you want to have something to do. You need a purpose in life, whether that's a job, school, internship, company. You need something to do. But yeah, I mean, I definitely wanted to start this show as well to kind of explain and tell people my story, my personal relationship with entrepreneurship, how it it makes me feel, and then also um, just share like relevant advice because ultimately at the end of the day, like what we're preaching are just life lessons, um, and yeah, that's I guess what I wanted to share.
Cool. I want to talk about something you just mentioned. Do you
Yeah,
think this will be kind of a little hot topic here? Do you think what are the pros and cons of actually going to school, or do you think there's certain majors that aren't worth the ROI in terms of investment and
totally.
job? And what just what's your outlook on college? I feel, just some statistics here, and I don't fact check me, but in I think it was the 70s or 80s, one only one in about 20
Hmm.
Americans had a college degree. And recently, I think it was like 2015 or 2020 or something like that, it was closer to 1 in 4.
Yeah,
So it's, you're going from 5% having it over to
25.
25%. And just like, basic economics, like when if something is more abundant, it's less valuable. And, um, you could also argue like, oh, well, the types of jobs that we have today require more of a college education. Like, yeah, but honestly, coming from a person who just went through college,
I don't think they do.
I hate to admit it. I hate to admit it, but like, oh, dude, like I think over half of the student population, and UT is a pretty rigorous school. Like over half the population is kind of just here because that's just what they grew up with. Like, oh, it was a narrative of like you just have to graduate, go to college, get a job, and in the world their parents lived in, that college degree held a lot more weight. And there was no Google or Chat GPT or Chegg or any of that to cheat with.
YouTube.
YouTube even. So like you had to go to the like library and study. So I think the level of dedication needed to be good in school has definitely declined. I don't know, it's my opinion. I think it's way easier to cheat online and all that, especially with COVID. Like us, dude, we had 2 full years
Bullshit.
of bullshit school, to be
Yeah,
honest.
stupid.
But um, I think I do think that it's I think that a lot of people, over half of the kids in UT, are just in school or just did school because that just seemed like the natural next step. They're in a major they don't really know if they're passionate about.
Yeah,
They really don't
absolutely.
care, and then they just do the bare minimum to get C's, get degrees or B's or whatever. They don't really take it too serious, and they're getting fucked up 4 times a week. They wake up at 10, 11, and just kind of lounge down to the super fancy high rise, have some tea, go back upstairs, watch Netflix, play with their dog, and then say they worked so hard that day.
And
And
didn't
like,
do shit.
yeah, and honestly, like obviously everyone has days like that, but I just kind of am. I can't imagine it being like that
It's not.
in like the 70s or 80s when it was like I have to go to the work at the library and
I don't know. I mean, it might have been,
I don't know.
but I think ultimately, like in the real world, it's not. And to answer
Fuck
your
no.
question, I I think what we kind of need to do as like a society is reframe the way we look at college because the whole idea has always been you go to college to become more successful, and I do think college offers more opportunities, but ultimately college is just education. So we kind of have to rewrite how we think or view college of not this vehicle that's going to help you become more successful, but more so it's a vehicle that's going to help you become more educated. And you know, I do think that there are some majors that are bullshit. Personally, I think my major was kind of bullshit. I do think at the end of the day, it's how you leverage your experiences, and that's why for me it was so like important that I worked because I knew I was already at a deficit and I had to learn skills and I had to adapt and overcome.
Yeah.
So that's why, those 2 COVID years, I was barely a student and I was more like an employee. I got a better taste of the real world, and that's ultimately what, at the end of the day, ended up leading me to pull the trigger and like pursue entrepreneurship. But yeah, I mean, I think college is worth it if you're gonna study a couple of things. Like, if you're gonna be an engineer, or if you're gonna be like in some sort of STEM field, computer science, absolutely, I think it's worth it.
What about business?
Um, I think it depends
It's a hot
because
topic.
this is and this is a hot topic, and I guess for some context and some background, and I don't know what it's like at other universities, but at our university in particular, people who study or major in business never do like business on their own, or there's nothing entrepreneurial about the business school here at UT. It's extremely corporate. It's all about like landing that big four accounting gig, landing that big four consulting gig. That's what it's all about. That's literally what the majority of Macomb students are.
Would you say that's a bad thing though? I think that if they're targeting and that's their objective, I think we do a solid job of getting that.
I do think so, but also at the end of the day, I don't think that's like necessarily what I always thought of
What business?
a business degree.
Well, you know
or
what that
business
is?
School would be.
That's us being, first, or that's us being immigrants,
Yeah.
families, and whose parents are all in small businesses.
Yeah,
Or not all,
absolutely.
but like that, like that's just something. Like my parents own a flower shop chain
Yeah.
that, they've operated for 25 years now in El Paso, and growing up, my idea of business was
Owning
business
your own.
owner.
Yeah.
But business as a discipline in a university can be something as granular as just like, not granular, there's a lot of types of accounting, but like an accountant or an analyst or finance, marketing, all those things that kind of fall into the business umbrella, where I think our definition very much was more on the entrepreneurial breed of business. And I think you can study business but as an employee, or you can do entrepreneurial, which I think that universities are I think they're doing a disservice to not focus more on that. Or at least I feel like I've never, I went through the engineering process, but I wish I had more like personal finance or
Totally.
like how to, a lot of entrepreneurship stuff. I feel like I kind of just learned through going through it
on the own. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of like the business students even, and if everyone in general, like half the students don't even know basic, like how to build your credit. How does your credit affect your loan options? All those things. Like I think our school system does a very poor job of encouraging entrepreneurship, and it just builds a lot of workers.
Yeah, that's 100% right. Like at the end of the day, our whole business school was just designed to produce workers for like big four firms.
Yeah.
And I do think that there's something unique about like what you said, us kind of coming from the background that we do, because I never even knew about this, and you might follow with me on this, but when you do start to see like that whole Macomb's accounting, finance, consulting like pipeline, I didn't even know that sort of thing existed, and that's something that's been happening for years. Like people have been going to the same universities for hundreds of years, and then ending up at the same couple of like large companies, and it just keeps happening generation after generation and after generation. I think maybe if we came from a different background, maybe if like for example we grew up in a white family where we're like third or fourth generation college students at UT, and our dad worked at McKinsey, our uncle worked at McKinsey, our grandpa worked at McKinsey, then we would know like, okay, this exists, we can go to Macombs, and then we'll get in. But like I had no idea that was even a thing that existed.
Yeah, I honestly didn't even know what Big Four was until like my junior year, but
Yeah,
because I didn't really care. But
I don't know.
yeah, it is what it is. But I want to touch on like the the fact that I mean, I'm Mexican by my family. Do you think that I think I had a conversation recently with, I won't say who, but a lot of that was that individual was also from Mexican descendants, and I think that there's a big narrative of like, oh, I'm disadvantaged, or I have poor access to things, and like whether those things, some in a lot of scenarios that is true, whether it's baked into a system or not. But I think that, and this is kind of like a completely separate point, but I've always been of the mentality of like, I'm not gonna let that make me feel like I'm a victim always,
Yeah.
and oh, it's because the system is rigged and I can't even, that's not for me, or I can't do that, or and like I think too many people are always complaining about the system this, the system that, and it's like, well, what about you? Like I got a heated conversation with that person because they were saying that the system is broken and it is all to the disadvantage of immigrants and this and that, and like, yeah, I mean, I there's a lot of implicit things that are baked in that you really can't bake out without a long time.
Yeah.
But I've never felt disadvantaged because of if anything, now a lot of companies are doing affirmative hiring where they focus on that you have a higher chance if you're of a different, if you're not white and male or whatever, to get into the job. And there's statistics behind that, and whether that's right or wrong, it's not really what I'm trying to say here. Is I'm very much the mentality of I feel like I've never had a disadvantage from being of an immigrant household, and if anything, I got to be bilingual without ever struggling, and I got a good example of hard work. And I don't think those things are. I think too many people ride their race card or their ethnicity card or whatever, their immigrant card, and they use that as an excuse to not go out and chase their shit because they get the easy card of, oh, that's, if you fail or something, you can just put the blame on, oh, it was a system that did this to me. You're like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's honestly been a pretty incendiary conversation I've had with a few people, and I had it recently again.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I've never felt any disadvantage at all
Yeah.
from being Latino. I don't know if you've ever felt like strictly because you were Latino, it harmed your opportunity, or I don't know. Have you?
I've definitely felt it before.
Or how?
There's been like multiple examples, and I can kind of get into those. But I think what I was gonna say in general is like, I think yes, like if you're looking at the system historically, Latino people have been like left behind from many opportunities. But I think it's different now. It's better. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but it's better, and it does come down ultimately to mindset, like whether or not you're gonna let it affect you, and also like I will say I think a lot of the opportunities where you're going to find it does like occur aren't necessarily things that you even need to be successful. So like for me, for example, I think where I've seen it the most was in job interviews. Like I would go to job interviews with like these huge Fortune 500 companies, and they would preach all about like this diversity, this and that, and all of that shit. And then at the end of the day, like my recruiters or like the people that I was interviewing with, it was like 4, 5 different white people from like Boston, and like they were just kind of sitting there like looking at me like I was stupid the entire time. And then end up seeing like a couple months later who got the jobs, and they were definitely people who were a lot less qualified than I was, and they were white. And so I mean, it's definitely a little discouraging, but you kind of just got to keep going through it. And also, it's never going to be an extremely overt thing. It's much more of a passive thing. Like, I don't know. I know there are people who have had experiences, but it's not like I've ever had somebody come and call me like a spick or a beaner to my face. I guess
Me neither.
ultimately, like thinking back on it, like thinking about just like where we come from though, like you living in El Paso, being insulated in a very like Latino community,
Yep.
it was probably a lot less likely. But for me, growing up, where I grew up, like in Katy, Texas, a very, I mean, I would say diverse ish town, but ultimately still like a very white, conservative, like country town. Um, Looking back, I definitely had plenty of interactions where people would like say shit to me that wasn't probably wouldn't I wouldn't let slide nowadays, but that was just like kind of how we like talk to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would definitely say like I'm sure that for other friends that I had like Asian, Black, whatever, they probably experienced similar um, things to like what I'm describing back home as well. Um, but yeah, I would say ultimately like don't let it affect you, and it's not gonna be overt. It's gonna be passive. So like if you are trying to look for it, you kind of have to look a little bit like
But
deep.
that's like my point though. Like I don't see why people want to look for that or want to prove to themselves that it's there.
Yeah,
I just don't understand why like there's a need to want to identify it more and more and then have that confirmation bias of like I'm looking for where am I feel that I'm being discriminated where instead of like
yeah,
if you just kind of like live your life, work hard and go through your opportunities. Of course there's extremes where like if you're getting blatantly faced with racism and with discrimination, of course that's an issue.
yeah,
But I think there's a lot of cases like you said where it's just overt and it's so overt that you can even just imagine that it's there and you just always point your finger at it and then it even discourages you from going and trying some shit because it's like, oh, that's maybe like you have the guts to go into that interview where you know that maybe most of it would be white or whatever. Some other people might say, or maybe like someone listening to this that wants to go try that would say, you know what, I don't even want to go because I know that the odds of me getting in are less and they're going to look at me like I'm dumb because I'm Mexican or because I'm El Salvadorian or from anywhere in the world that's not white or whatever.
yeah.
And I don't know. I just think there's a lot of people that it's not my thought process and I don't really look for ways that I'm being discriminated against. I look at myself. I'm just a human being, just like you, just like the white people, just like black people, Asian people of all kind. And like if you're in an entrepreneurial way too, you can kind of. There's a lot of entrepreneurs that are Latino and things like that. Do you think that barrier or that as overt as it may be, do you think you face less of it in an entrepreneurial versus a corporate environment because you have more? It's more of like I run the show, and maybe some people won't work with you because of your race or because of your ethnicity. But do you think you experience less or more as an entrepreneur or in a corporate job?
I think you experience more in a corporate job, and I think ultimately it comes down to like being an entrepreneur. You have more control
Yep.
over what you expose yourself to, or this and that, right? Like, for example, maybe like you're a landscaper and you're Mexican, and you have a client that's white, and they're consistently just trying to beat you down on price. They're just thinking like,
The
oh,
price is the price.
yeah, this is like some like cheap like Mexican landscaper. Like I'm gonna get him to do it for as low as possible. Well, at the end of the day, you can be like, yeah, like sorry, no, I'm not gonna do that shit, and then just walk away. So
Exactly.
yeah, I do think as an entrepreneur, you have more control. You have more control over the situation and environment you put yourself in. Um, but with corporate, it's definitely different, right? Because you're always
At the mercy of.
at the mercy of whoever's above you and whoever's above them, and yeah, you probably deal with a lot more shit. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's less now with all of like the um, diversity and inclusion incentive, or not incentives, but like practices and things like that. And also going back to like what you were saying about affirmative like hiring initiatives, I don't necessarily think that's true, because to be honest, every application I have done, it's like, are you Hispanic or Latino? And every time, obviously, I put yes, and that hasn't had any effect on me getting a job.
But it's like, how could you tell if it's affected or not? You're not the one that's picking out
Yeah.
who and who's not. And I don't know. I think here's a thing for you. Do you think big institutions, Harvard as a
Mm-hmm.
university, Apple as an employer, whatever, do you think that, or for a fact I know the demographics of those big groups are available online for someone to look up.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at
We
the
can look it
Princeton,
up. You want to
if
look
you're
it up?
if you're on the Princeton Review, you can find like Harvard demographics. You can see, um, yeah, it tells you there's
But anyways, yeah. What are you like trying to
yeah,
say?
I'm saying you can easily tell. You can easily tell online. These things are public that they try to have, or they tend to have a relatively, they're trying to get a more even representation
Mm-hmm.
of different races in the job force, in the schools, gender representation as well. Do you think, um, do you think there's Apple executives who are thinking, or Harvard people have sued Harvard because like white Asian males who
Yeah.
are have have sued Harvard saying, "Hey, I'm more qualified like on a resume basis because of my SAT, because of all, like I have a perfect application. My essays are amazing, but I got rejected because of there's too many white Asian males there, and that's not fair to me." Do you think that what do you think about that?
Um, I think so. I guess what I would say is like at the end of the day, it's ultimately up to the university and the college's decision to choose like who they want to pick. Whether they do that based on quotas or not, I don't know, to be honest. Like I don't work in college admission.
But do you think they do though?
I don't think so. And I think, to be honest with you, I think what it is now is if you look at college historically and you look at who's always gone to college, it was always rich white people, right? It was always rich white people for like hundreds of years. And then over time, you had more like minorities going to college and whatever. And I think now what they're trying to do is that they're trying to still let people who are smart into these universities, but they don't want it to be all like one person, right? Like they if it came down to it, if it was based solely on numbers, um then any like every university would be filled with Asian students, right? Um I
But
th-
that's my point though. Like one, I don't know if that might be true, and probably statistically we could probably prove SAT scores by
yeah,
whatever.
by like race.
But like that's exactly my point. That was the Asian guy's point that was suing Harvard. He was saying, look, like my application and all these other Asian people who feel wronged by the system because that they have nothing to do with that. Like they're born now, they have nothing to do with like what has been happening for 100 150 years, whatever. They're applying and they're saying, okay, well, I literally worked my ass off. I have all the perfect accolades. I have all of these things. But if you have maybe 100,000 Asian dudes apply and 100,000 Native American descendants, the acceptance rate would be vastly higher in one field than the other, and they feel wronged by that. And that raises the question that I'm asking is, do you think it's right do you think in the spirit of trying to have a more even outcome, you have to put different siphons to make it harder for one group that has more qualified individuals?
Yeah, I do. I think that's wrong. But I don't think that's what they're doing ultimately. And I think they're doing it a different way because, like, it comes back to the if it was based purely on the numbers, then you would have, like, whoever has the highest SAT scores. So then, yeah. So maybe it'll be, like, all, like, Asian and white students. But I do think that neglects a lot of things, right? Like, personally, I think you could have a perfect, like, 1600 SAT score, and you could come from a super rich white family growing up in like a really great neighborhood. Your parents were able to pay for you to have tutors your entire life. You were able to have an SAT tutor and a college consultant that got you ultimately into Harvard or Stanford. Or you could be a kid from the hood. Maybe you grew up homeless or you were an orphan and you had no help, you had no assistance, it was just you busting your ass, opening up those books every night by like a little like lamp in maybe a group home. You worked your ass off and got into Harvard. And I think those are two very different situations. And I think nowadays that's why we're putting less reliance on the number and we're putting more importance on the situation. Because, like, for me, and we can, like, kind of talk about this now, but I had a 28 ACT score. I think my fucking SAT was like 1200. I didn't even apply. I didn't apply with my um, SAT. I was probably like a 4-ish GPA. I want to say like at the highest it was like a 4.3 or something.
Out of what?
Out of 5.
See, mine was out of 4.
Yeah, out of 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like on paper, I wasn't supposed to, like I said, make it into UT. But I also had a lot of other shit that they probably saw that they liked. Like, I came from a single parent household. I played football. I did orchestra when I was in college. I started clubs. I was very active in my community. I had a lot of hardship I went through while I was in high school. My house flooded during Hurricane Harvey, and that's not even to mention like a bunch of other struggles. And so, they probably looked at me, and they were like, okay, yeah, maybe his numbers aren't where they need to be, but all of the shit that he's been through, if he didn't have to worry about it or go through that, his numbers probably would have been higher.
Yeah, and even with the numbers, having, whether you're looking at class rank or you're looking at GPA, different pockets of the country have different standards for those things. Like,
of course,
even like maybe being in the top 5% in a 100-person class in Wyoming could be, no offense to Wyoming. Yeah. I don't know, but I'm just throwing that out there. That might be a lot easier than like being top 5% at a at a private school in the Woodlands or private school in New York City.
Yeah,
where you're having like you said, whether it's systemic, whether it's fucked or not, a lot of people in those demographics have increased access, from a young age to tutors and things of the sort to get them ready. And there's pockets that, it's no secret, like certain pockets of the different cities have higher academic scores than others. And I think it's real hard to, coming from El Paso, like I think I had, our school system is great and it's good, but it's not, it's not Austin, Eanes, ISD or whatever, or the Woodlands. So I feel like I had I think I had an easier time getting into the top 6%, which for those of you listening, if you have the top 6% of your graduating class, you're automatically accepted into UT Austin.
If you're at a Texas school.
Yeah, if you're at a Texas school. So I didn't even have to like struggle to get in. But I mean, admittedly, I did have good numbers because I don't know, I'm good at taking tests, but I know people who are just as smart as me, if not smarter, but they were in a more competitive environment.
Totally.
Where they didn't get even because of them being in that environment, it made it more difficult for them to get into UT. So the whole numbers thing is real hard to quantify.
Yeah.
And the best thing you get is an essay. You don't even have a face-to-face interview. With like when you're hiring somebody, you get a chance to actually meet them and see them and everything. With the college admissions process, it's just like it's an essay. And guess what? Now we got ChatGPT. So
yeah, it's like a whole different ballgame. How
are they even going to do that now?
Yeah, I really don't know. And so ultimately, like maybe these concerns that we're having, like it's just going to be erased at this point because of like AI. But I think what you said was definitely like really important. There were kids that went to schools that were a lot harder and they had to struggle more. There's also kids that went to schools that were like a lot shittier. For example, like there are a lot of kids at UT from the Valley.
Yeah.
Not to shit on the Valley or anything, but the Valley doesn't have as great as a school system as other places. Like for example, maybe
the Woodlands.
Yeah, the Woodlands or like Dallas or Houston. And a lot of those schools are small. So their entire top 6% probably ends up going to UT. That's why the concentration is just so like heavy.
Puro 956.
Verga.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's true.
yeah.
I understand that, and I think it's hard. It's if there were an easy solution, someone would have figured this out.
Yeah.
It's like, do we go on a number basis? Probably not, because we're going to be systematically enforcing, the rate,
same
the
shit
same
that we've
stuff that's
been
been
doing.
happening. Because if you go strictly off numbers, you can have first you can have underqualified people from shittier school districts or whatever, and then you could also have you could be promoting that privilege or whatnot by just looking at numbers. And holistic approach just got screwed with Chat GPT. So it's kind of,
Yeah.
and dude, even during the pandemic, they weren't even using SAT scores
Yeah.
for
No, they
for a year or
weren't.
two. I don't know if they reinstated that, but
I don't know.
yeah, I mean, and it goes so much deeper than just school. Like, getting into the school is a huge deal, and I think being like if I would have gone to a different school, I think the opportunities you have going to UT Austin and going to some other school in a it's not as prominent or whatever. Maybe the community life and things could be better elsewhere, but being in a big major school like this, and we're not the biggest or anything, but we're a big school. That opens so many doors. So it's a huge deal. Just the system and whatever flaws it may have. Being at UT, I think more. We were talking about the usefulness of college. I think in large parts, it's a lot of just mindset framing and networking.
Yeah. I would honestly argue that
That's like the value for me.
yeah, I would argue that we didn't even need to come to UT. I think what was the best part of this experience for us was just moving to Austin. And that was one of the main reasons why I chose UT. My other options were going to be like Texas Tech, Texas State, A&M, and then U of H.
Just kidding.
And the reason I chose Austin was just because like I knew I wasn't going to be at a school in the middle of nowhere. There was going to be things to do. There was going to be more work opportunities, more internship opportunities. And I do think you do a disservice by going to like, for example, Texas Tech or Texas A&M where they're in the middle of nowhere, because then you're limiting yourself in a way. Like, say you're a student at A&M and you were in a position or situation like I was. I was very lucky that I was able to get a job, get an internship, and work like during the semester, during the school year,
to pay your rent and all
to
those
pay my
things.
rent, to pay like my tuition, to pay everything, and also to get experience. If you go to like a school like Tech or A&M, some options get stripped away. You can hopefully get a remote position, but if you don't, then you've got to rely on like you're only getting an internship in the summer. So yeah, I mean that's a very important thing to consider. I always think, you gotta be where the work is.
Yeah, I mean, I've never even considered that. I'm just talking about, getting into college in general at a place like UT.
Yeah.
So many of the doors, like hell, I completely switched career paths.
Yeah.
In high school, screw it. In middle school, I was the kid. I was always the nerd. I was a kid with a plan. I knew.
Same.
I knew I'm gonna go to Cathedral High School, like all boys, Catholic, pretty academically strong in El Paso. I'm gonna go to Cathedral High School. I'm gonna graduate. I'm gonna be valedictorian. I'm gonna go to probably UT or another big engineering school. I'm gonna do engineering, and then I'm gonna get an engineering job. Start investing in real estate after a few years when I have capital, and then eventually wean off my
engineering job.
Yeah, and then kind of just go full time into that, and start a business with my brother. That was always my plan, and it was so clear in my head I could recite it forwards, backwards. And then COVID happened, and I had so much time on my hands. I just decided to start getting into like hell. I got to do something with my time. And then I had a good friend of ours, Jay Song, he just basically told me like, hey, why don't you look into getting your real estate license? And that little seed of, just because I was at UT, I was in Texas Wranglers, our organization, Mateo and I happened to know this guy, Jay Song, because he kind of just incepted that little seed. Hell, my whole life is different.
Yeah.
I decided to get into it. I started polishing up on my skills in terms of sales, business, team leading, whatever, stuff that I had never even had to touch in the past because I was so busy with like, I got to get this CAD software and this differential equations and I love that stuff still, but I completely changed interests strictly because of the fact that I was in this perfect ecosystem. UT Austin was the perfect, like, cradle to grow my
Real
business
estate. Yeah.
specifically. There's a high turnover rate. There's high budgets. There's low vacancies and no evictions. It was a perfect environment to plant my business. And looking back on it, it seems so, I don't even know if it's coincidental, God, or whatever it might be, but being at the right places really opens up so many doors. And I think for those of you listening, if you're in high school, definitely try coming to a big metro. Why do people move it to New York City? It's not,
There's a lot of work out
yeah,
there.
because it's the jobs. Why do people go to, they go around central CBDs, what they call them in commercial real estate, commercial business district, or central business district, sorry. There's people go where the work is. And I think you as a student should go to where the opportunities are at. And I mean, there's nothing. I don't mean to, shit on the smaller schools that like in Lubbock or in College Station. These places are great. Big upcoming company, Fetty, the guys from A&M. Things can come out of those pockets, but where does he live now?
Here.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
you come to where the business is at, and I think you made a good point. You should do your best to try to land where there's opportunity. And like, those of you doing the CAP program, please do it and come to UT. You're not going to regret it.
Yeah. And I think ultimately that does come down to like why a lot of people go to New York after they graduate, or why a lot of jobs are just based in New York. It's Central Business District. It's the Central Business District. Yeah, so I mean, it's a great place to start your career. And I will say, it is big. It's New York, right? Like there's millions of people there. But if there is any place where it still kind of feels like college a little bit after getting out of college, it's definitely New York, because you have thousands of people who are 22, 23, just graduated, starting their full-time jobs in the city. So, there's a plethora of people. For us, Austin definitely has a trend of people staying here after they graduate.
Yeah.
So there is still people, but it's not like that everywhere. Like for example, Kiefer on sorry for name dropping, but if you're watching, hi Kiefer. Kiefer is in Houston now. Yeah, he got a job in Houston. So
Nice.
when I was back home the other day, I went to go hang out with him, but it's a little odd because we were just kind of talking about like Houston's a very, I don't want to say unique. I guess it's unique, but like it's Houston. Like it's a huge city. It's a commuter city. Everybody drives everywhere. Going out isn't like how it is here. You have to drive places. It's not walkable or whatever. And so he's kind of facing this dilemma of how do I make new friends? And I'm about to be in the same boat too, because I guess, one of the big pieces of news that Ed was referring to earlier for myself is that I'm going to be moving to Dallas. And so I'm excited because I'm getting to experience a new city. I love, being able to come here has allowed me to broaden my horizons. So I think, I can go anywhere now. But ultimately, I am kind of scared of, like, making new friends and starting over in a way, because it's going to be harder now. So,
Yeah. I mean, I think, I haven't had to do this because I just graduated and I'm staying in the same town. Fortunately, a couple of my friends are staying here and I'm going to be living with them. My brother and I bought a house and they're going to be renting out the rooms. We're basically breaking even on the mortgage. Not really, but we're paying cheap rent because of that. I'm sharing a room, so you got to do what you got to do. But I think I've seen a lot of people struggle with that loneliness post college.
yeah.
And it's kind of, dude, sometimes it's in the places you would least expect it. In New York City, where there's millions of people, thousands of pubs and bars and clubs and, the Central Park and all these things to do. It's almost like sometimes it's weird how that works, but you can be more invisible if there's more. You become like a grain of sand in the beach, and like no one knows who or what you are. No one gives a fuck. And everyone's busy like with their work and everyone's so self-centered. But there's things you can do to kind of mitigate that, I think. And some of the stuff that I've seen people do are join recreational sports leagues. They join a basketball league where they see the same group of dudes every Thursday at 7 for their game. After a couple games, you start getting closer with them. The group chat gets active. You go grab a drink after a big win. You watch the NBA finals with them. You might pick up one or two good friends out of that, or you join a BJJ studio or
Yeah. Is
or
that what
whatever.
you guys have been doing with your basketball?
Yeah, I've been doing that just because I've whatever. But you can join a martial arts gym. You can join like guitar lessons, and you'll find someone you meet there, and it's just kind of having something that's a repeatable hobby. I think people need
Yeah.
hobbies. A lot of people have no hobbies, and it's really sad because a lot of people's hobbies are like
Drinking,
drink
going out.
drink. Yeah, and it's like if you're in college, I think there's a certain point where, and hell, most people don't reach that point while they're in college, and I don't think I really did. I'm kind of doing it now, but I think there's a certain point where your fun activity stops being, let's go pregame, let's get drunk, let's hop on a Fetty or an Uber, go downtown, do the same thing, just get absolutely plastered, just shots, beers, whatever. Go to the same bar with the same people every night, do the same exact thing, and then spend $100 and then come back home and then be wrecked the whole next day. And then right when you're recovering, your brain fog is going away, your liver's like not flipping you off, and it's 5 p.m. Guess what? It's time to pregame again
Yeah.
at 7 or whatever. And and people their brain will be complete. And I've did this for years. So like you'll be completely out of commission from Thursday night until Monday morning.
Yeah.
And it's like, hell, that's half the week. So like that, I think there's got to be a taper where you start having, Thursday night and go out to dinner with a few buddies, but have like one drink
Light
or movie
drinks,
night,
yeah.
like a movie night, or go hike somewhere on a Saturday, or mountain biking, or volunteering. Like you got to start filling your time, especially as young graduates. I think we got to start shifting our time and spending it on more wholesome activities where you can actually bond with someone. Like, how much are you going to bond with someone at the bar at a club where the music's so loud you can't see shit?
You can't.
You're faded and you're just there like bopping around, bumping into people, and then the most you do is dab them up, and then you see them next week, same thing. Like I think the depth that gives a lot of breadth of relationships because you meet a shitload of people, but there's no depth.
Yeah.
And the depth
totally.
is what really has been something that I've been trying to focus on as a recent grad. I don't know if you resonate with that at all.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is very true. I would say one thing is that when you're in college, you don't have a lot of time for hobbies, or maybe you don't think you have enough time for hobbies. But like for me, my main hobby was music. It's always been music, yeah, and I've barely touched my guitar in the past 4 years. So one thing I'm looking forward to is getting back into music, and it's funny because I'm slowly like getting there. When I get to Dallas, I kind of want to start another band. But
That's Mateo's band.
yeah, thank you. My
Check
old
him
band,
out.
not my band anymore.
Check him out, the Craigs. You still got 370 monthly listeners.
I mean, yeah, that's all my homie David. He's still going strong with it, and they actually sound great now. But I was gonna say, yeah, like I want to start another band when I get to Dallas. I've been like looking every day at instruments on like Facebook Marketplace, mainly like synthesizers, because I want to kind of do something a little bit different and like more unique from what I've done in the past, and then hopefully we'll pick up like some of my old hobbies like jujitsu. Maybe even like try boxing or something like that. But I do think one thing that happened that's difficult has been like post COVID. I think made a lot of people, myself included, it made me an introvert. And like honestly in a way kind of fucked me up. I'm not gonna lie. Like I'm definitely not as outgoing as I used to be.
Pre-COVID.
I'm a lot more of a homebody. I'm like a lot more anxious in large crowds and certain social situations and things like that. So it's kind of hard for me to come out of my shell now, like it was before. Like I remember, Did you ever come with me to Lift ATX?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Once.
Yeah, so like I went to that gym for a year.
Mhm.
Very consistently, like probably the most consistent I've ever been to a gym, and I actually really love that gym. I love the equipment. I don't know if I like the people as much. They're kind of all annoying in my opinion, but ultimately, I think the point I'm trying to get to is like I went there for a year and I didn't make a single friend, not a single friend, and I think I didn't really put myself out there. I wasn't trying to talk to anybody or communicate with anybody. I was always headphones on, grinding, working out.
No asking for a spot.
Yeah, but sometimes. But like those relationships were there wasn't a single one that I came out of that with that were deep, and I think um, you know it's kind of something I regretted because there's a lot of people there that I could have made friends with, but I didn't. So I just have to make sure for myself I really do try, and that is scary in a way, because I don't think I've like tried like that for a while. I I met you freshman year, and we met the majority of our friends that we've had in college freshman year.
Yep.
Besides, us, we haven't really branched out much, which I think was a was a good thing. Like it wasn't bad because we had people to hang out with, and I think freshman year, which is like probably the most fun, best year of college, would have sucked a lot more if we didn't do Wranglers and we didn't make all those
There's
friends.
a lot of people who are in that situation, dude.
Yeah, but I also think that it kind of harmed us in a little bit or it harmed us a little bit because like we didn't have to try and make friends that much afterwards. So I like to just think of it like I'm not really good at making friends anymore because I haven't had to in a long time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're gonna have to now.
Yeah,
So
I know.
Either that or you'll be lonely as fuck. So yeah.
Fuck. Even playing like video games, right? Like I know you don't play video games that much, and
Yeah, I don't.
I try not to, but I've found myself with more free time, so I have. But like I don't play Xbox with anybody. I think since like the Xbox 360, it's been a lot harder to make friends on Xbox because all of the people who actually like play together with each other online all have PC, and I don't have a PC. It's too expensive. But fuck, I don't even have friends to play like Xbox with, man. Like
I haven't.
Besides you, I don't talk to many people.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like in my line of work, I touch or not touch people. I
hope
I
not.
touch because it's like you touch your contacts or whatever.
Yeah,
I have
touch base.
I touch base with my contacts very, very frequently and a ton of them. So like, but the thing is, it's kind of a weird dynamic because I might get 100 texts. I get way more than 100 a day probably. I might text 30 or 40 people every day, but it's always for something transactional.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to like, it's or even if I'm like, hey, I hope you're doing well. How's the new apartment? It's still kind of tied into real estate. I also have like a small group where I do call them and just say like, hey, what's up? How's the relationship? How's your family? How's the new job? The new city? Do you want to go get a drink? Let's go work out. There's only like maybe 5 to 10 people who are really in that circle.
Yeah.
And then everyone else. And I don't think. What do you think is the biggest circle that someone could genuinely have, where you touch base with them frequently and it's a deep conversation? I think I would draw that line. I can't see how someone had more than like
5.
like 5 or 10 would be like
10 max.
you can't have like more than 10 real deep friends where like what do we say in Wranglers, like your 2 a.m. guy.
Yeah.
Like if you're having a hard time and you just need to talk to somebody, someone who would get up out of bed, drive over to your place or walk over to your place in our case since we live next to each other and like just sit there and listen to you and give you advice and really have your best interest. Like have your best interest in mind, not theirs. I think 5 or 10 is tops.
I think, also the older you get, the less friends you have, which is a sad and kind of depressing reality, but ultimately like a reality that
But they're
you have
deeper.
to get used to. They're deeper. They're a lot deeper. And um, ultimately they become like more so like your family, a lot more closer and whatever. But I can I can even remember now, like there are friends that I hung out with when I was a kid, like family friends, like
Mm-hmm.
where I don't even know if we're like family friends anymore because our families haven't hung out in a long time. Um, and yeah, I mean, you kind of just evaluate that as you go, and it is sad. It is a little depressing, but you know, it's just change. It's just different. You have to get used to it. Um, I think I I think at the end of the day, you have to get used to and comfortable being by yourself and being alone. And, I think hobbies are a very important thing. And so I'm going to focus on getting back into my hobbies and, doing my hobbies more. And I don't think like playing video games it's not a hobby. It's not a hobby. It's,
It's like, what distinguishes an activity from a hobby then?
mm,
Because, like, let's look, what is a hobby? Playing a sport, playing an instrument. Um,
Well, okay, let me go back. I do think it's a hobby. I just think it's not a constructive hobby. I think
it's also not a social, I guess
yeah.
it could be a social one,
Yeah,
but the
like
majority of
technically
it,
drinking it could be a hobby. Like going to the bar and drinking, I mean, that's more so like alcoholism, but like that could be a hobby too. Um I think what's just important is having like constructive hobbies. Like
yeah,
going and playing basketball, that's physical activity. You're staying
social,
fit. It's social. Same with combat sports like jujitsu and things like that. Social, you're learning self defense and you're getting physical fitness in. Music, you're getting to express yourself creatively. You're getting better at an instrument. You're creating art, and you can be social from that. I mean, there are plenty of musicians and artists that are very like antisocial, but
yeah, none of those harm your health. I think that's a big thing. Like,
yeah,
you know, drinking with your friends or whatever basically is harming your health, whether you want to look at it that way or not. Um, I think we should cover that topic and then we can wrap it up. What do you, I think, for college graduates, whether we want to admit it or young people like our age, I hate to admit it, but I think alcohol has played a very
huge.
huge pillar of, and not even just with our age, like alcohol is the backbone of a lot of the social environments. Like whenever you want to network with somebody, hey, let's grab a beer, or people in their 20s want to go out, they go out and get drinks. Whenever you go out to dinner on a date, you get drinks. As an entrepreneur, how do you, I think it's very common sense that alcohol is unhealthy for your body. Even just one drink, or I guess one drink of wine or whatever could help your heart. I don't know, but people don't do that. They go out and then get 5
Just a bottle.
yeah, which is not even, there's no argument where that is healthy.
Yeah.
Since we know it's clearly unhealthy physically, it's also going to harm your next day in terms of productivity. And if you say it doesn't affect you, that's bullshit. Everyone gets a hangover, whether it be a light one or a heavy one. As an entrepreneur, what do you think is the ideal balance of how often and how much to drink, or how much should you allow yourself? Maybe one night a week where you get to go out, because I don't know, I've struggled with that a lot, because I went from freshman year, I was going out and getting drunk 4 times a week, which I'm not proud of, but yeah, 4 times a week. And then throughout the course of my college career, I kind of dwindled that down to like one time a week or one time every 2 weeks. And it's kind of for me, it's a real hard thing to do, because I don't want to. I've been super, like I did 75 hard, super sober, super on the ball with like drinking water, working out, reading books, going to bed at 10, waking up at 5. And when I was 21 years old, and I literally burned myself out, and I had no fun. I hadn't gone out anywhere, done anything. I was just super regimented, and like my business went parabolic,
Yeah.
but my happiness went parabolic the wrong way at the end of it. And I don't know. I think the key for me was a balance. So like, what has that been? Have you had, kind of tell us your story with not even just alcohol, just like partying and then your work life balance? How do you achieve um, what's the optimal ratio there? Or if there's no optimal ratio, how does one find that for themselves?
I don't think I've found an optimal ratio for myself, and I also would say that I haven't really been much of a partier. I never was. I actually like didn't party in high school ever. My mom never let me go to one. So like my first party was like in college, or I guess like maybe like
At my
after high
apartment.
school. Yeah,
Just kidding.
probably at your apartment. Um, but no, like freshman year, same thing. Went out a lot, but after that, definitely like haven't gone that crazy since. Um, I think when it comes down to like alcohol or whatever substance it is that you're into, um, I don't want to say you should do it in a way where you function, because like that's not safe or healthy, and that's actually a big problem that we're starting to have in our country is substance abuse issues with remote workers, because they're home, so it's easier to hit a dab pen or secretly be like sipping on a cocktail while you're supposed to be working.
Yep.
I think it does come to like the point where if it's not affecting your work, then it shouldn't matter. But if it is, you've got to cut it. At the same time,
That mentality enables it though.
that mentality does enable it, and I think um, if it is truly affecting your work, it's hard to see it and hard to like confront it and be like, oh, like I gotta stop. So to be fair, I would totally say like don't at all. Like if you could be completely sober, do it. You'll probably have your best judgment. You might think you're more creative or you're better while you're high or you're drunk or whatever, but you're definitely not. You're definitely not. But if you're gonna do it, do it in moderation. That's what my mom always told me. I'm not much of a drinker. I will say there was a point while I was running my business where I was getting really stressed, and I would come home. It was just like junior year. Kind
Crack a cold one.
Not even honestly, like not that I don't drink beer. I actually like beer. I just was
See.
really getting into whiskey at that point, and so I was always having like old fashioned, like always making myself like a cocktail. And looking back on it now, my roommates and I would do that like every night for like an entire weekend, like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, like, and even sometimes Sunday. We would sit there and we would just drink whiskey like the entire night, like 2 3 glasses, which to be honest, like piled up. So I haven't really drank like that in a while. Now if I do drink, if I'm going out, I'm not much of a drinker. I'll drink like maybe one or two. Maybe I'll have a beer and a cocktail, or maybe like a couple beers, but that's it. I do want to be completely sober though. Like I think in terms of my health, um, my family has some health problems like on my dad's side that I really need to look out for, especially diabetes. And now I'm kind of getting to a point where I really need to watch what I eat. So I'm being a lot more like conscious about those decisions, and they are hard, but in a way it does make me feel good knowing that I'm like looking after or taking care of myself. But
Yeah.
I think mental health is a big part of it too. Your physical health is important, but if you're not taking care of your mental health, then it doesn't matter. I was my most shredded and literally wanted to kill myself like every day. Was so depressed, like hated myself, hated my life. Couldn't look at myself in the mirror and be like, "Oh, you look good." Like people are always complimenting you. They're saying you're getting swole. I just thought I looked fat, and so you know you gotta be up. You gotta be right up there. I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. I think that's a huge, very overlooked, especially, for young men.
Totally.
There's no, I don't mean to generalize, but in my experience, young men, they want to be, and maybe it might just be a Latino thing. You don't want to be you know, the little guy who needs help. You kind of just want to be like the macho. I can fend for myself. I don't need to ask anyone to hear my woes, because like I'm just gonna be tough and just be a man, period.
Yeah.
And like, I think that attitude has served me like very well in like entrepreneurial and hardworking, but I think it's also harmed a lot of society looking at someone asking for help as like a frail, weak thing to do. I think it's encouraged a lot of young men to just kind of hone all those things, keep all those things in,
Yeah.
and it's not a surprise, suicide rates and all those things are far higher for men than women
Yeah.
because like the girls will their group chats going off all day about this happened and oh my god and this I need to talk, I need to vent. And I think men lack a support system and a venting system far more than women do, and they turn to things like self-harm or alcohol or substance abuse in general to kind of like ease that. And I don't know what the solution is for that. People have
Yeah.
what do you think?
I think it's a little bit of like changing the narrative and just being more open and being more honest about the conversation. I think the way we've done things for a long time are not correct. There's a reason why they call it toxic masculinity because it is pretty toxic.
Toxic.
And I think that's something we need to change. But I guess just kind of on the topic, have you seen the BetterHelp ad that's been going around? Look up on YouTube BetterHelp ad. I'll show you which one, but it's a very good advertisement and visual representation of kind of what like mental health sometimes looks like or feels like. And when I saw this ad, I was like, damn, like they really hit it on the nose. And I think just kind of on the topic of like entrepreneurship, this is definitely like an advertisement that for like therapy, for a therapy business, it's just like a great ad. Sorry to like lighten up the mood and totally take it elsewhere, but no, it's really good. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah. That's such a tricky thing to navigate because like I myself am very much like a just like don't feel sorry for yourself, get up off your ass and just grind and don't be a bitch or whatever kind of mentality. But then there's also points in time where like I've felt like I needed help or I felt like I wanted to talk to somebody about something. And there's guys on YouTube like Dan Pena who will be like snowflake this and like
No.
and then and I think that I don't know. I think it's I think it affects people very differently. I think it's a very big issue in our country, and I think it's reflected in a lot of ways with like all the shootings and all the suicides and all the hate crimes and things that happen. I think the root of a lot of that is mental health, and that's something that's not really focused on enough. And but here's my take on it. Like you got to take accountability for your own the space between your ears. And even though the outside world can affect what happens in your head, and like if you're being discriminated against, if you have situations in your life, I still think that life is like 90% what you make of it and 10% what really happens. And I think if you can dominate the space in your own skull, you can insulate yourself from a lot of those things.
I couldn't find it, but
yeah, I think a lot of people, mental health is a very real thing, but I think a lot of people don't even try to take active steps to better it, and they just kind of dwell in the different things that come with it. Like
yeah, totally.
Because you gotta like you can be depressed, anxious, all the things, all of the above. But if you're not having a good sleep schedule, if you're not working out every day, if you're not eating well, if you're not trying to meditate or journal or set goals and have accountability partners or call your mom more often or surround yourself with people, then like I think so many people don't even check any of those boxes of self-improvement to try to get out of those ruts, and they just stay in that, and they just turn to drugs to perpetuate that, and then they go to the doctor and it's so overly fucking medicated, or they get all kinds of stuff, or they don't even try the basics like having a sleep schedule and eating healthy.
Yeah, I think having strong mental awareness and like being strong mentally, like what's the whole kind of thing that David Goggins preaches? just like mental fortitude. Like
Yeah.
having mental fortitude absolutely helps with mental health and like mental awareness. But if
I'm
you can
saying
be
is people
strong
don't try to
here,
get better. Like I
no, they
think
don't.
they
They
just
don't.
they lean on the Xanax, or they lean on the whatever. And like
Yeah.
I think there's like the antidepressants and all. And I do think, of course, I think there's situations, and they might be common, they might not be, where chemically, even after you take care of all those bases, the eating healthy, the good sleep, the meditating, the journaling, whatever works for you, if you try all those things and you stick with them for a while and you don't have any improvement and you just have an actual chemical imbalance or something in your head, then of course I believe in the medication of that. But I just think it's really sad that a lot of people, because big pharma and because whatever, like they have such easy access to all these things that just are basically putting a band-aid when they really need to go in there and do some surgery on their lifestyle and their habits and their mentalities and the way they live their lives.
Yeah, I will say, I don't think it's like as easy as it might seem though, because the whole nature of depression is that like it's a cycle. And I've seen it in other people, but it's like a very difficult cycle to break. Like if somebody's depressed and you can kind of outwardly see and tell this person is depressed based on their lifestyle and the things that they're doing. I mean, I've literally seen firsthand like somebody being depressed, not really wanting to like I guess own up to it or acknowledge it, and then slowly try to get out of that rut, do things that they used to do, get back to their old self, and then it's like a week or two of effort just gone in a day, and then it's like months again of the same shit. So it's a
Yeah,
vicious cycle. It's a hard cycle to break. It's not that easy.
I agree. I don't mean to be insensitive to
Yeah.
anybody going
No.
through those things. I just, I've seen those things firsthand too, and I just think,
Yeah.
I think it's a complicated issue, but
Yeah.
I think that people don't have enough of that. There's not enough of that message of you can get out of this incrementally, one step at a time. And I understand like when you're in that bottom, and quite frankly, I've never really been at the very, very bottom. But if you were in the bottom, it might seem like it's 1,000-mile long journey to get better,
Yeah.
but it really just starts with one step. And that might sound corny, but it's the truth. Same thing with entrepreneurship. Like going from here to having a profitable business is a long ass journey.
Long journey.
But it starts with one step of just buying the domain, or
Building the product.
making a logo off on Fiverr, or
Yeah.
doing whatever, or getting jacked is a really long process.
Yeah.
But it starts with just one workout. And here's another thing. So many people who do preach the whole, like what I'm saying, go to bed, steady sleep schedule, good diet, all these things for health, wealth, and happiness. A lot of the people, I think they frame it so, it's such a disservice to all the young people out there or people in general trying to abide by that. They frame it as if you miss one day, all is lost. If you fuck up once, if you go out and break your schedule once, if you do drugs once, if you do these things, that it's intimidating when it's so rigid and so strict. But it's like, what if a fitness coach told some fat person that's trying to overweight person who's trying to lose weight, if you skip cardio once, all of it is wasted. That's not true at all. It's if you're batting 90, if you're hitting 90% of the time, but you extend that a year, you're gonna be ripped at the end of a year, or you're gonna lose 40 pounds in a year. And I think it's the same thing with mental health. A lot of people get on that. I've done this where you get on I'm going to journal every day. I'm going to wake up at 5 and I plan my Google Calendar down to the fucking 15-minute little, barely can even see it. And it's just all the way down. I'm super meticulous. I'm going to be journaling and I'm going to be doing my meditation practice and whatnot, cold shower, this. And I feel like sometimes the problem with me is I think it's so strict and rigid that when you fail once, you kind of just throw it all away.
I was about to say, like, I completely agree with that.
And
because for what you said, I think is very important. And I've always kind of been in that mentality, or seen myself in that mentality, where I'm like,
I'm in it too.
Yeah, like I have to do this every day, and if I don't do this, like if I skip a day or I fail a day, like I suck. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and then I get like sad or upset because I didn't do it, and then it just makes me not want to do it
Exactly. Your
anymore.
some people say your self-esteem is a function of how well you keep promises to yourself and how well you're able to abide to the things you're going to say you're going to do. If you can't even keep up your own, your own promises, then it makes you feel like, damn, I'm not even dependable to myself. Like, I must really suck. I
Yeah.
said, and as an entrepreneur, you have so many things coming from so many angles. Zoom meeting here, class if you're in school, class, Zoom meeting, homework,
Emails,
emails,
texts,
customers, and then there's always
Slack.
issues that come up, and it's really fucking hard to have your day really planned out
Yeah.
and then actually do every single thing in the exact increment, because hell, one meeting goes late and then the rest of it gets screwed, and you kind of just like, you end the day like, fuck, I'm stressed, like your shoulders are tight because you've just been juggling all sorts of bullshit. And I think the secret is kind of learning to accept that all we can do is do the best that we can and try to hit as many points as possible, and acknowledging that just because you miss one doesn't mean that the whole day is shot. And kind of, I've learned a very tactical thing you guys can implement, the listeners, like on Google Calendar, whenever I schedule all my stuff, I used to schedule it where I had something 3 to 4 and then 4 to 5 and then 5 to 6. But now I make sure I go 3 to 3:45 and then 4 to 4:45, just so that, one, it helps when I look at my schedule, it's not like 100% blocked every second of the entire day. And you know what? Some of those meetings are going to run long. So, you can, instead of just being a victim to the fuck, this ran late, I can't do anything about this, getting more intelligent and smart about the way you calendar things, giving yourself time to actually move from point A to point B, to finish a conversation, to eat lunch appropriately, to do all the things that you need to do, I think are easy ways that you can actually, that 15-minute gap, golden nugget, I think, if you want to be able to make a schedule you can actually do. Because I agree with you. There's a lot of times where I set the most detailed schedule ever. It took me an hour to craft it perfectly and to set up all my meetings and to make sure everything was perfect. One thing runs late and I'm fucked. And it sucks. So yeah, that 15-minute rule, very, very good for me.
Yeah. Well, I guess let's just wrap it up on that. Do you have anything that you want to say before we go?
Yeah. We are, I think this is our last episode before you move.
Possibly.
Possibly. Either way, this is not going to end, for our loyal fan base out there.
Like the 5 of you.
You're very big. You're very, very important for us. I really enjoy being able to come on here and kind of give my 2 cents about all these things. And, this episode was more of about us. I hope you got a better picture about who I am and what I do and who Mateo is and what he does. If you want to find out more about me, you can find me on Instagram. Just look up Eduardo Duran. You'll find my photo. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on, like I said at the beginning of the episode, lweleasing.com. If you or anyone you know is looking to buy real estate, hit me up.
Yep. I guess same with me. Thank you guys for listening. This is definitely like my therapy, I would say, weekly.
This is yeah.
And if you want to get in contact with me, LinkedIn, Mateo de Lagula, and then at Local Solutions on Instagram and TikTok, and then make sure to follow and stay up to date with what we're doing here at YEB. Thanks, guys.
Peace.